Hi, Carrie here, and we're going to talk about how we can create interactive Google Slides presentations for students, and we'll share with you some of our design considerations and tips. So let's get started. One of the first things we think about is color, and we always like to pair high contrast colors together by either placing dark text on top of a light background or light text on top of a dark background. But we generally avoid color combinations like these that don't offer enough contrast and just make it more difficult for the reader to view. Similarly, we tend to rely more on softer color tones that tend to be more pleasing for the eye, as opposed to brighter color tones that can be jarring. We're also a fan of the gradients, and we'll show you how to select from the preset gradients that Google Slides offers. In addition to color, we like to think about fonts. For the key ideas and information on the page, we like to use clean, easy to read fonts. Here are some of our favorites and what they look like. Whichever one you choose, just stick to that throughout the presentation. And if you like those fun fonts, which we do too, we generally keep those just for headings and titles. And here are some of our favorites that we go to. You can see that they have a little more personality. So let's say you have a blank screen and you're just getting started. Where do you begin? You might start by first picking the background color you want to use, and you can do that by coming up here to the background button. If you don't see it, just click on the space in the background and it'll pop up. When you click on it, you see you have the option to choose an image or a color. If you want to choose a solid color up here, you can, or you can toggle over to this gradient option where you see these other options that we often like to pull from. So let's just pick a color for us to use here. Let's have this light yellow. And now we have our background color. And we can come to this text box here and put in our page title. Maybe we want to pick one of our fun fonts. We'll do our cabin sketch and just type in our page title here. Oops, if I can spell title. And then either in the preset text box, or if you want to create your own on the page, you would use this button here and just put in whatever key ideas or information you want to put on the page. And so here's just quickly how you get started. We forgot to pick our font that we want to use here. So let's say we'll go with Montserrat this time. And let's say I want the text to pop out a little more. I might want to fill in the text box by coming up here to the paint can and picking a brighter background color to make the text pop. And maybe I want to make the text a little darker so it really has that contrast. And so I can resize this as well, and you can see how you get started. So beyond the color and fonts, we also like to put in some visual cues that just help the readers know what to expect from a particular part of a presentation. Here, for example, are some icons you could use to let students know that they're about to do a reading or work on an assignment or about to get into groups to discuss something, or they might be working on some writing or exploring some resources. And these icons can be found pretty easily through a Google search, or you can go to Slides Carnival, which we do often, and it offers free templates and icons for public use. You could also add images when appropriate. You could copy and paste images that you find, always considering the principles and guidelines of fair use. Or you could take screenshots of documents or websites that you're linking to in a presentation. If you're going to take screenshots, you need to know these two shortcuts, which we go to all the time. The first three buttons you would press together on your Chromebook keyboard to take a partial picture of the screen, or if you want to take the whole screen shot, you would just use these two buttons together. If you want to make text boxes or images pop, you might want to, as we already showed you, might want to fill them in or add a border. So if you just look here, the default for a text box is to be without a border and without fill. But if you click on it and you fill it in with that paint can, you can also come next to the paint can to this pencil icon to choose a border color and to choose a weight. And so 2 tends to be one that we often go to, and it just gives the text box a little bit more shape. You can do the same thing with an image if you want to make it pop a little more by doing the same thing, coming to the color and picking a weight. Let's pick a thicker one just so that you could see the contrast. 8 would probably be very thick. Yeah, that would be probably a little too thick, but it just gives you a sense of the options. We also like to cue readers to any resources or images that are live links that take you somewhere that are interactive. And so we put little hand icons like this, or you could put a little arrow icon, just something to let readers know, click here, it'll take you somewhere. And speaking of links and making presentations interactive, once you've figured out your design, you can really think about how you're using the presentation to take students on a learning journey on different pathways. And so you can make the presentation interactive in a number of ways. You can link to lots of different types of things. You can link to an external website. So let's say I have the screenshot of the New York Times and I want to link to the page. I just come to the New York Times, grab the URL up here by selecting it and Control-C to copy. And then I come back here, click on the image. I come up here to the Insert Link button, and I paste my website, Control-V right here, and apply. Now my image, did that work? I didn't take it, but let's do that one more time. And I hit the apply button, and now it's a live link to the website. I can do the same thing to link to other parts of the same presentation as a way to offer students the ability to navigate the presentation in different ways, moving through different pathways. And so what I do here is select my image, my screenshot in this case, and I come up here again to the link icon, but instead of putting in a website, I'm going to come down here to the slides option, drop down that menu, and as you see, I can link to any slide within the presentation. Again, once you apply, now this is a link to that particular slide of the presentation. You can do the same thing if you want to link to Google Docs or other Google Slides presentations you've created. You would just come to the Google Slides that you've created or to the Google Doc that you've created and just grab the URL from up here and link it to the image in the same way. You can also make the presentation interactive by sharing it with students in a variety of ways, depending on how you want them to interact. So if you want them to have their own personal copy, which is pretty neat when you want them to be able to use the notes feature down here to take notes on the presentation as they're moving through a lesson sequence, or they could design slides or write in their own reflections in the text boxes, then you would want to give them their own copy. And you can do that in two different ways. You could come to Google Classroom and you could create a new assignment. And as you're creating your assignment, pull up your Google Slides presentation. And you see here that you have a drop-down menu where you can choose 3 different ways to share the file with students. If you just want them to look at it and not edit it or do anything with it, that the first one is the default, students can view. If you want all students to work together in the same document as a class, then you would select the second one, edit file. But if you want the kids to have their own copy and they can work on it personally, individually, you would make the copy for each individual student. You can also provide an individual copy of a Google Slides presentation through the Force Copy feature. And you do that by coming up here to the URL. And what you want to do is you find the word edit, which is usually either at the end or near the end. You want to take out anything after the edit, and you want to make the last word copy. And when I take this URL, copy it here, and I bring it to my slides presentation, and let's say I link a part of the presentation to that URL that has the word copy at the end, I'm now going to force students to make a copy of it when they try to open the link. So it won't link to my presentation, but it will send them to this page where they're forced to make an individual copy that they can then interact with personally. There might be some cases where you want kids to work off the same presentation. You don't want to give them an individual copy, and you could do that by changing the sharing permissions up here, and you can make it so that all students can edit it, or that students can edit them with individual groups if they're working on a group project, for example. Lastly, we like to sometimes have back channel discussions or question bins, and then we place a visual cue like a question icon, for example, in the corner of the page that can then repeat on all of the pages in a presentation. And when students click on it here, it'll take them to some kind of a discussion board or back channel question bin where they can ask questions of the teacher or talk about a particular topic. So we want to leave you with this last point, which is why reinvent the wheel? There are lots of templates out there that have already been created for you and have done a lot of the work for you. So we encourage you to check out Slides Carnival or use one of